Hi guys. So I'm Brezak. I'm the founder and chief editor of Netokracija, which I hope you read as a tech blog in the region. We also have, of course, our Slovenian edition, our Slovenian editor, Anna, which is also in the room. So if you have news, if you have breaking news, just find her and pitch her, please. That's just a small request on my part. And before I start this wonderful panel, I'd like to invite my panelists to introduce themselves, what they do, and why they are here. So starting with Ciara.
Okay, so I'm a technology journalist and I write mainly for Fast Company right now, and I'm here because I wanted to see Slovenia.
Hi, my name is Matija Žulj. I'm founder of Agrivij, an agri-tech startup, and we are building a farm management solution for farmers. Our vision is to change the way food is produced, so I'm here for that.
Hi, my name is Davor Fabčič. I'm a salesman. I'm helping our customers to sell better.
Hi, I'm Alessandro. I'm working in TechPeaks Accelerator in Trento, Italy, and I'm leading the operations. Thanks.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Reinhard Willfort from Austria, Graz. I'm the managing director of Innovation Service Network. We have also an affiliate here in Slovenia, PODIM. And I was the founder of the first crowdfunding platform in Austria, and I'm also a board member of the European crowdfunding network, and I'm happy to bring this topic to the panel.
Awesome. So a very interesting panel of people. So let's start with the basic, because when we talked before this panel about the topic, and that's trends, and that's markets, and what it actually means, we came to the conclusion, or someone did, very astutely, that trends might mean different things to different people, especially if you're coming from the media, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're coming in as an investor. So let's just try to see what that means. So, Ciara, from your point of view as the media here, what do trends mean for you in the context of entrepreneurship, in the context of startups, and how can startups use them to their advantage?
Okay, so I suppose there's trends at lots of different levels and lengths. So there's things like decade-long trends, like the changes that are going to happen in healthcare, or an aging population, or so on. The tech news business actually has a very short attention span, so quite often we're looking at whatever is being talked about now. So when it comes to getting coverage for your startup, what can be a very useful strategy is to link something that's in the news right now, so it may not even be a long-term trend, to whatever you're doing. So to give you a good example, I wrote about a company called Bot and Dolly, which is a robotics company. But what they do is they took industrial robots and they attached cameras to them and they used them to film, movies. And not only to do the camera work, but also to move props around, move actors around, and so on. So I wrote this article maybe a year and a half ago, and not many people read it, even though it was very interesting, as far as I was concerned. But then a year later, a film called Gravity came out, and as it happened, Bot and Dolly's robots filmed all of Gravity. So when I initially talked to them, they wouldn't actually let me mention the name of the film. So we slapped a new headline on the same article, which was a year old, and said, meet the robots who filmed Gravity, and suddenly it was the front page story on VentureBeat, which is what I was writing for at the time. So that can actually be very effective if you're just trying to get news coverage.
Cool. Matija, your experience as an entrepreneur is something a bit different in the sense that you're trying to use trends, right, to grow your business, and that one of those trends is, of course, agrotech. What's your experience? What have you've also been to the Next Web conference, right, in Amsterdam. So what happened?
Okay, so for me, what is trend actually, and to answer it, we recognize that young farmers are taking over the farms from their parents, and this is a trend, and we saw that as an opportunity to finally get technology to farming market, because it's currently empty, at least below the enterprise level. So we were at the Next Web, also we entered into top 10 startups there. The reactions were really great. Everybody loved it because everybody was questioning, okay, how come it doesn't exist already? And when they take a look more briefly, they saw really nobody is there currently. Actually, there are some cool startups globally that are trying to do that, but it's currently, agri-tech is currently a very hot market. So it's on the beginning and it's really trend currently.
Alex, so at TechPeaks you prepare future entrepreneurs, right? You get young people, you don't even get teams, you really get individuals, and you prepare them for their future entrepreneurial career. How do you see trends influencing them? How do you advise them on using both trends and also analyzing markets so that when they do have a team, when they do have a startup, they start in the right way?
Yeah, of course, markets matter a lot, but we as TechPeaks, the tagline of our accelerator is People Accelerator. So I'm very fond with a concept I've been told by Fadi Bishara that is founder market fit. So once you go to a journalist, once you go to your future employees, once you go to anybody, you're going to talk about your business and the market you are targeting, you need to tell something compelling, and it's clear after a second if you care about it. And of course, it should be a market that is relevant. It could be agrotech, it could be security, it could be even something not sexy, but you should be able to say something relevant about the market you are aiming for.
Davor, from a sales perspective, I'm guessing companies can obviously use trends to enhance their sales, right? To help themselves to more users, more buyers in the end. What's your perspective?
Yes, if I just continue from the Alessandro, it's extremely important to increase sales to understand the business of our partners, of our customers. So it means to go in deep in the market drivers of the business, which is different for the security or IT. That's one of the crucial points. Another point, maybe we have to differ whether we are in the segment business to business or business to customer or business to business to business to make it a little bit more complex.
So what would be the practical difference for a young startup in using that, depending on if it's business to business or business to customer?
Practically, it means for the young startup, if you're in business to business, that most probably you have to, you cannot afford a lot of funds and resources to have companies all over the countries you want to acquire. But you have to find equal, let's say, emotional entrepreneurs to drive your business on. So you actually have to develop partners which understand your business and the business of your customers. So this is one, let's say, point to have in mind, because those more mature companies fail in this point at the market exam.
Reinhard, you're into crowdfunding, obviously, which is a trend, right? How do, from your perspective, we've seen like a lot of love and a lot of hate for crowdfunding, right? Be it for Kickstarter, be it for other platforms, be it for the companies that use them. So for being a part of a trend, of a growing trend, right? What do you think? Are companies using crowdfunding enough? Should more of them use this trend to their advantage? Is it overhyped maybe? On the other hand, is it doing more bad than good in the long term?
Yeah, I think it's a trend which will not go away anymore, yeah, because for entrepreneurship you need two things: a good product, a person who can drive it, and on the other side money. Yeah, and that's the real big gap I would see at the moment in different countries. Also in Austria, we have we have enough money at the banking accounts, but it's not available for entrepreneurship. Yeah? So you do not get money from banks anymore, or it's hard in the first phase where the risk of the project is very high. So I think crowdfunding is a good solution for entrepreneurship, because you get two resources. You get the money, and on the other side you get the crowd. Yeah? Because if you can use the crowd, and I think that's a trend which will not go away anymore. You can interact with them. You can find out, is your product on the right way? Is it usable? Is it good for the audience which you want to address, and so on? So I think that's a cool resource for the future entrepreneurship. And so I think you should use it more. Of course, it's overhyped at the moment because I think in the US, the reward-based crowdfunding is successful with some projects, but I think we have to bring it to local areas like Slovenia, where you say, okay, the crowd is here in the local area. We want to drive new businesses, and we want to integrate also the community here locally to finance that, and also bring the product to the market. I think that's will be the next step. I think we should have local platform activities, and we should connect them more to be more successful also in the European environment. That's, I think, would be the next step. And I'll see a great resource on that crowdfunding facilities.
So just talking about other trends, except for crowdfunding, which you're obviously very interested in, what do you find interesting as far as trends that are good for startups from Slovenia or from the region, startups that are present here?
One trend is also to be very near the customer side. Service design something is also a new methodology in the innovation management. You think about the customer needs, make their lives easy with new technologies, I think, make it personal, make it use also crowdsourcing, integrate ideas from the customer side. I think that's also a great chance to be on a way to a new business model. So, and I think that you should also use. Do not think about there's a customer and you are the supplier. Think about communities. Think about interacting with your communities very intensively, because when you reduce the risk at the end of the day of your entrepreneurship activities. That's, I think, you should use as an entrepreneur in a very first phase.
Ciara, you mentioned a very good example in your first answer about the difference a big trend makes, right? What would you, again, very similar question, what would you advise Slovenian startups or regional startups to use to make them maybe more interesting to a media outlet like Fast Company, or should they not use trends and try other means?
I think they shouldn't use trends
No?
a lot of the time. So the kind of company, so I see trends being used in a bad way all the time within the tech industry, and in particular in companies that pitch to us, for example. So you'll get a pitch which is basically a load of buzzwords that are popular at the time, or slight variations on companies that are very successful at the moment. So like WhatsApp is just acquired, therefore you get a load of messages from people who are slight variations on WhatsApp, and that's just not interesting, probably either as a business or as a story. The kind of companies that I like tend to have, and this is very personal, but tend to have, they use deep domain knowledge. So they have deep domain knowledge of some particular area outside of software, unless they're making a tool for developers or something like that. Or deep technology. So this is the kind of stuff that comes out of universities and takes 3 or 4 years to actually develop. And this is the kind of thing which is probably there's quite a lot of in Eastern Europe and Russia, and then also very talented engineers. So I think the way to do it is actually more to look at what is unique about me, what unique perspective and skills do I have, does my team have, does my country have, and kind of build on that, and then maybe link to a trend which is not mainstream yet. So again, to use the example of Matija's company, he's linking to a trend of these younger farmers who are now, coming into ownership of small farms all over Europe. So that is something that is not well known, but it's a trend that's only going to get bigger and bigger. So if you're going to use a trend, really, it should be something that is to build a business, because it takes a few years to build a business. It should be something that's not really mainstream yet, and that's not a buzzword yet.
Matija, just to get on that question, so you were not working in agrotech before your startup, right?
Yeah.
So how did you know that how did you discover your trend, the one that you hope that will grow your business, and what would you advise other entrepreneurs if they find something that might seem interesting, how to make sure that, okay, this is the way we should probably go with our product?
Okay, so actually, I was not in farming before, but 2 years ago, my family started blueberry plantation. And then we were looking how to get knowledge, which tools to use to help ourselves, etc. And there was nothing there, actually really nothing 2 years ago. And then I started to dig, and I discovered really completely blue ocean here. So this is how I discovered on my own example here. What can be seen just as a trend, that there is really a lot of consumer startups that are aiming really wide mass. Everybody wants to be Facebook, etc. But for example, from our region, we are really small countries. We have small markets, and we cannot create such big traction in the beginning in consumer market. We must focus on B2B more, on real problems to solve them. So this is my opinion, and I think that more startups should focus on B2B segment.
Alex, how do your founders react as far as the question of choosing B2C to B2B, especially depending on where they're coming from? Because as Matija says, a lot of startups, like most of the successful, I'll wager on it, and probably someone will tell me otherwise later on, but like looking at most startups from Eastern Europe, they're B2B. So is like Zeit, that we've heard the story, right? Is that something that when, again, another trend comes, that's not B2B, is it something that founders can use even if they're from this part of the region? And what would you advise them then?
I think it's not bad. It's very good that you have a lot of B2B companies, because typically in the western part of Europe, startups tend to focus on B2C. And there are typically three main types of startups. I'm following mainly very early stage startups, and the three types are startup engineered and designed for three different goals. One is to be acquired by Twitter, by Google, by this kind of guys. The second is designed for VCs. VCs as investment directions. So the general partners tell them, look, invest in agri-tech, in this kind of things. And the third is, okay, let's design a startup for a real business. Okay, I don't care about investment. Investment are just enablers for me to run the business. And in any case I've seen, especially in countries such as Italy and Slovenia, where the VC market is not mature, I've seen that you need to leverage what are your capabilities. So if in Eastern Europe, in Central Eastern Europe, you are good at talking to businesses, it's a strength you need to leverage. And in any case, if you're going to design a startup for running a real business, you might end up being invested in VC. It doesn't matter. What really matters is your capabilities and your strengths you are leveraging.
Do you find that in that sense that, especially because you have experience with younger founders, that the unexperienced try to use trends more because they just don't have the domain expertise that Ciara mentioned? And how to fix that? Because again, when we even look at startups in like at Netokracija, when we're writing about them, there's a lot of students coming out of university. They see, okay, startups are sexy. I want to do my startup, and then afterwards, it's not just going anywhere, right? From your experience with TechPeaks, what can we do to help them? And it's not just like, okay, you should not do a startup.
It's a lovely question, thanks. Running a startup, it's a nightmare. If you are not prepared, don't do that. Or be prepared for living nightmare. And let me say that lean methodologies, and hopefully you're going to have a talk later, helps you a lot. Validation from any people you're going to talk to. It could be investor, could be journalist, it could be your customer. Ultimately, the most important people is your customer. Helps you a lot and helps you in understanding whether you're just wasting your time and the time of people you're involving in your venture or not.
Davor, as far as sales go, do you think that companies that maybe already have an existing product and existing technology can or should use trends as a way to make it more interesting to customers? Is there a point to it? or should they just develop new products and not try to make older products more sexy or interesting?
Yes, if you just rely on trends, it's definitely not okay, but you have to take them into account. I would not just say new and old products, but I would go from the point of view, what is the value added that I can add to the value chain of my customer. So maybe one consideration is, should I be a product or service deliverer, supplier, or should I add something to my customer in their business? So definitely the trend is, or the better way is the last. So how can my product, whether it is old, new, in line with trends or not, can upgrade the business of my customer? And that's what Alessandro said. Talk to your customers. Customers are the ones who bring you incomes that you need as the blood in your veins, and not the product. Product is just the fine idea. We are very passionate about the products. We believe in our products. It should be, but still, the customer should buy the products.
Like, listening to a lot of things that you said, like be concrete, like listen to the market, listen to users. I can't stop and think about a conference actually I didn't go to, unfortunately, but I saw that Founder Startups was organizing in the US called Unsexy. It was a conference about unsexy companies, companies that do enterprise software, like deep technology, data. It's not interesting to journalists in most cases, right?
No, I just want to make it clear I'm a big fan of unsexy companies, so they're the main.
Okay, so unsexy can be sexy for journalists. That's good. But what I wanted to ask is, having in mind now that we're being really like, okay, we need to think about the markets and everything. And then we look at, for example, companies on the other side of the ocean, obviously. Are we as, well, let's say Europeans, just not hyping ourselves enough with the trends? Are we not creating trends or helping create trends that could help these companies position themselves, be it on the European market or on the global market? What do you think? This is a question for all of you. Anyone?
Okay, I'm less shy. Anyhow, I think that trends matters a lot, especially if we are thinking of journalists. They really care about something that is sexy and a nice story to be told. But let's imagine a very unsexy segment, which is security, and very few startups. I'm working in the European Institute of Technology, EIT, ICT Labs, and only 2% of startups are working in this segment, which is one of the pillars of the organization. But if we look at the market, it's more than $100 billion market just in Europe. So it's huge. Is it sexy? Yes, it is. And so I'm really for that.
So we have to make a trend out of unsexy markets, so the founders go to them and make them.
I mean, also, I'm working from the public sector, so I'm saying this also probably to the organizer of the Startup Slovenia initiatives. We need to find our competitive advantage as a territory, but also as a company. So it's hard to fight against giants or people who have more network, more experience. So you need to find your niche and your differentiation with respect to other companies, other territories. So maybe moving for the unsexy, which actually it is sexy, could be a smart move.
I would just like to point out that I also used to work in security software, so I'm obviously the wrong journalist for this panel. But I think one problem that I think, yes, a lot more startups should be looking at areas that are not in the news and that are not being talked about and that are not being hyped right now, whether it's security or it's something else. So I wrote about one company called Harvest Automation, and that's a robotics company as well. But the guys who started that did an awful lot of market research, and they were trying to figure out, okay, what can we use our robotics technology for? And what they came up with was actually garden centers. right? If you're talking unsexy, you know. This is a huge business in the US in particular. So where garden centers where they grow plants for use, where you can go and buy a plant and put it in your garden. And one of the things they have to do in these huge nurseries in a garden center is like move plants from here to here and then from here to here all the time. And it's very difficult to get people to do this because it's mainly immigrants because it's a really boring and physically demanding job. So they basically came up with a little robot which is about this size and it's very specialized. All it does is it goes and picks up one plant from here and it puts it over there. So you program it. And now they have a lot of these like immigrants from South America who barely even speak English. They came up with an interface which you don't even need to be able to speak English to program the thing. So they are now managing these like little armies of robots in garden centers in the US because of this. So that's the kind of thing. It's like looking beyond the obvious to what could be a huge business, but because it's not in the news, you're not thinking about it.
So Skynet, that's how it starts. Great, awesome.
It's going to start in garden centers. Now you know.
So what I'm hearing, people should start startups in areas you're not writing in. And then, okay, that's a good tip. Matija, back to you. I just remembered when so the non-obvious thing. One thing that, and you don't have to go into detail here, but one of the things with your startup Agrivij is that I was very, very impressed with, is that you had a very good story as far as stages. It's a very thought out process, right? It's not just it's not just the base camp for agriculture. And we'll not pitch people here, but what I'm interested in is how much did your previous work experience help in doing that plan? Because if we're talking about domain experience, if we're talking about finding trends that are not obvious, from your own personal experience, would it be just logical, okay, don't start startup now, go work in the B2B segment, and then later on find your domain expertise? What would you advise someone that would come to you now and said, okay, in 5 years, I want to have Agrivij or something?
Well, actually, when I started, Agrivij started as idea, of course, but I spent 9 months on market research, talking to farmers, to agriculture experts, to everybody. So 9 months, it was just talking, getting feedback from the market, and I had a really great job. I had one top management position, etc., and I didn't want to leave it to go to something that is not certain just for my hunch. So I really did good market research. From my experience, doing really great market research is important because I know based on market research, I did really strategy. I know which are my key markets in 3 years, which are where to go in 5 years. So I really have strategy for that. And if you don't make good market research, then you can't do that. So.
And the whole career before that, working for the agency, actually helped you do the whole project, right? Or the research?
Okay. Well, yeah, because I worked as managing director of an advertising agency. Before that, I was unit manager at IT company. So my background is computer science and MBA economics together. So really, it helped me to know all the processes, how the business works. So.
Reinhard, so as far as market research goes, crowdfunding is a great way to actually see what people want, right? We've seen platforms that even let big companies ask people, look, guys, do you want this product? What do you think? How can startups really use crowdfunding or crowdsourcing to find out what their customers need and maybe find these trends that we're talking about that aren't sexy and two, aren't visible on the surface?
Again, I think the networks are a great resource for doing entrepreneurship. Normally, entrepreneurship begins with the identifying of a customer need, of a problem, yeah, and one person drives that. And I think that's the very first beginning, the emotional part is say, okay, I found it out and nobody else. And of course, the first way I have to do is there a patent, is there another company which is also working in that area? If nobody does that, maybe there is no market. Yeah, that's maybe first conclusion. Yeah? But on the other side, I think if you integrate crowds, and not only the money, you integrate in a very first phase the crowd like a knowledge of, a network of knowledge. Yeah? I think that's a great resource. We can find out, is there an additional need, is there a product already solved or created on that topic, and I think so. That's something which we should use in the very first phase. At the end of the day, to reduce the risk of your entrepreneurship activity, because at the beginning, if you think about ideas and talk about opportunities, there is not so much resource necessary. Yeah? So I think that, and if you need also the power of the crowd, you have a resource which you never could use before. Yeah? Before we didn't have this technology. Now we are in the position that we can do that anytime at any place. Yeah? So it depends on your focus, also on the customer side. Where is your community? You should find out what are the customers which you should integrate, and is it a global activity, or should you start locally here in Maribor and say, okay, who is interested on your activities? That's maybe also a good point, maybe to find additional partners in your team, because one person is not a good entrepreneurship team, I would say. On the one side, you have one person who has the great idea, who is maybe the technology driver behind, and on the other side, I think a good entrepreneurship team is if you have a second person which says, okay, product is good, but we have to find out who is the first who will pilot that product, and we integrate this two person to a team, and when you have a successful startup team, and on the other side the crowd could very fast help you to be on the market. Yeah. There's, I think, also a new word in the research area, lean entrepreneurship, which means to be very fast on the market with new network activities, and the other side also to find out or to very fast fail, yeah, and fail cheap. I think that's also maybe a point which you can solve with network activities using crowds. Yeah.
So just to close on that point, because we have just a couple of minutes left, and then to questions of the audience, what would be the one tip that, and this is a question later on for all of you, what is the one tip you would give to an entrepreneur as far as trends go, if you needed to sum it all up into one key tip?
I think in an entrepreneurship activity, there are some things you can change and things you cannot change. Yeah? And I think the most important thing is the person and my talents and my ideas and what drives me to do that. Yeah? Because you need a lot of energy and a lot of effort to come to this success at the end of the day, I think. So that must fit to your person. If it doesn't, also in a team, you cannot change the person. Yeah? You can change the product, you can change the business model, but the person cannot be changed very easily, even if you have 40 plus or more, yeah? Because you are very experienced, you have a lot of knowledge, and you will not change it very fast. So I think that's the most important thing, to find out what are my talents, where do I want to bring in the effort on which I can do and solve, and also very fast integrate other persons, crowd, team members, which can add competences which I do not have. Yeah? So I must be aware what can I do and what not. Yeah? So and I think that's the most important thing, yeah? Because at the end of the day you need Saturdays and Sundays also where you have to work, and you will not do that if you are not really energized from your idea and the drive behind. I think that's very interesting and a very good tip for the beginning, yeah? Because otherwise you will not have the success at the end. If it's only a trend, we'll say, okay, I try it, a new app, yeah? We have a lot of apps, and I think enough apps, so should I have additional app? I think that should not be the way. You should be the driver.
Well, after trash talking trends for most of this trend panel, I will suggest a couple of things. So maybe a couple of shorter term trends, which maybe are not something you should found a business on, but that you can use in executing your current business if it's relevant. So there's a really good website based in Amsterdam called trendwatching.com, and they release free trend reports every month or so, and they have a couple at the moment that make complete sense to me. One of them is called not the Internet of Things, but the Internet of Caring Things. So most people don't care about the Internet of Things, they care about these little things that are going to care for them, that are going to improve their health, or that are going to, you know, make them feel more secure or whatever. So it's a different way of talking about the same technology. And the other one is no data. So we've had big data, and now it's going to be no data. So in other words, that a tech company which is not gathering data about you, or that is preventing other people from gathering data about you, is actually going to become a selling point. So that's my 2 trends for the day.
Okay, so my message would be that focus really on real-life things and real problems, and use trends just as a trigger. So trends are passing by, and real-life problems stay. Real-life and business problems. So this is my message.
From the sales perspective, a lot of companies look for opportunities, and quite frequently they are striving and trying to get those opportunities, and at the end of the day they found out that there are not opportunities at all. So it's much better, because startups are in the phase of acquiring new customers, which is really full of energy needed and time. It's very important to think about opportunities that you see today as the customers, whether they are really or not, or just sexy visually, but not sexy by the heart and by the business that you need.
I want to stress and emphasize what Matija said regarding do not overthink market trends. Do your homework, check at market, use it as a reality check whether it makes sense to run the business or not. And don't overthink too much.
Cool. Okay, so now we can move on to your questions. So any questions of the audience to our panelists? It doesn't have to be trends. You can ask them something else if you're interested in. We're not leaving this until we get one question. Just saying. I'll go on. Don't be shy. These guys were a bit shy. Okay, in the back.
Hello. So I have a question for Mr. Willfort. How likely is it for a mobile app to get crowdfunding money?
I think it's not depending on the app. I think it's depending on the problem which you solve, and is there a community which is interested to use that. Yeah? So what you should have if you start crowdfunding, you should have a crowd before you start the funding, yeah? Because otherwise you have developed 2 different things which you need for crowdfunding. The one is the crowd, and the other side is the activity in the crowdfunding that people spend money on your app. Yeah? So I think it should be a solution which is very good, understandable, and if you have a cool customer need, I think that could work also with an app very, very good. Yeah.
There's also a company called Sell-In App which does this specifically for mobile applications. I don't know how they're doing right now, but I came across them a year or 2 ago.
Any other questions? No? Oh, I don't see them. No? Okay.
Can I make a question?
Go on.
Thanks. No, you told that here in Central Eastern Europe, you're particularly good at building B2B startups. And the question is for you. So how can, I'm used to see a crowdfunding platform very good for validating B2C products. Can it be good also for B2B products? Or is there something like that?
I think that will be the next great step in the crowdfunding, because at the moment we're only talking about startups, but we have a lot of SMEs which are already on the market 10 years and have also the big problem to not come to money for next product development. So, and when the crowd could be also your maybe sales partners, maybe you have 100 people who have the voice to the customer for you, yeah. So then you can integrate them as a crowd and say, bring in 5,000 euros, yeah. When you have 500,000 euros from 100 people, which are very closely engaged in your SME company, and I think that's a next step in the P2P crowdfunding market, and that's not existing at the moment, but we are currently developing this these environments. And we're also thinking about how can we do that also in Slovenia, because we have about 1,300 users, which are investors at the platform. If you see that as a network of different areas and you connect that together, you will have maybe at the end of the day 30 or 50,000 people. And so Austrian people could also invest in Slovenia, and Slovenian people could also invest in Austria. I think that's a great challenge. So we are working on a network of crowdfunding activities and also on the P2P solutions where we can help SMEs which are already on the market. Yeah.
Awesome. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening to my panelists, and a big applause to all of them.